The arena lights dimmed once, then twice, and Mira Chen stood at the center of 70,000 screaming voices wondering if anyone had remembered to feed her cat. She was 17, barefoot, wearing gym shorts and an oversized hoodie with a faded star on the front, and her dark hair was pulled into a pondal that had already started to slip. Somewhere above her in the vaulted metallic dome, the alien King Voreth of the Kess Dominion sat on a throne carved from asteroid core, waiting for Earth to present its champion. No one had told Mira she would be that champion until 6 hours ago. Voreth had arrived 3 weeks earlier with a fleet so vast it blotted out the moon. His message was simple and delivered in flawless English through every screen on the planet. Humanity had trespassed into contested space. The Kess Dominion demanded satisfaction. One fighter from Earth. One fighter from the Dominion. If Earth's champion won, humanity would be granted provisional membership in the Galactic Assembly and the right to negotiate trade, borders, and peace. If Earth lost, the Dominion would annex the solar system and redistribute its populations as labor across 12 colony worlds. There would be no negotiation, no second chance. The fight would take place in the Grand Coliseum aboard Voreth's flagship, broadcast live to 400 species across 9 star systems. Every government on Earth mobilized. Special Forces operatives, martial artists, enhanced soldiers, anyone with a record of combat excellence was tested, interviewed, scanned. Mira had been walking home from her part-time job at the library when 2 people in dark suits stepped out of a black car and asked her very politely to come with them. She thought it was a joke until they showed her the badge, the clearance codes, the live feed of the Kess fleet hovering just outside the atmosphere. They drove her to a facility buried under a mountain in Colorado and sat her in a white room with no windows. A woman in a lab coat explained that 3 months earlier, during a routine school health screening, Mira's neural profile had triggered an anomaly flag in a defense database. Follow-up tests confirmed it. Mira's brain produced a quantum resonance field measurable at the cellular level, a phenomenon theoretical physicists had only recently begun to understand. In layman's terms, Mira could manipulate localized probability fields through focused intent. She did not know this. She had never known this. She had spent 17 years thinking she was just lucky. The woman in the lab coat said luck was one word for it. Another word was potential. The Kess Dominion recognized such fields instinctively. Their warriors trained for decades to sense and suppress them. If Mira walked into that arena without training, without understanding what she carried, she would be obliterated in seconds. But if she could learn to direct it, even minimally, she might survive long enough to make the Dominion reconsider. Might. The woman did not promise victory. She promised Mira a chance to try. Mira had asked what would happen if she said no. The woman said someone else would go. Someone trained, someone brave, someone who would lose. Mira had gone quiet for a long time. Then she had asked if she could call her mom. They let her. She did not tell her mother where she was or what was happening, only said she loved her and that she would be home soon. Her mother said she loved her too and reminded her to pick up milk. Mira said she would. She hung up and looked at the woman in the lab coat and said okay. That had been 6 hours ago. Since then, Mira had been briefed, scanned, fitted with a subcutaneous translator chip, and flown in a stealth shuttle to the Dominion flagship. No training, no practice. Just a crash course in how not to accidentally collapse her own probability field and a reminder to breathe. The officials who escorted her to the arena entrance were silent and pale. One of them, a general with gray hair and tired eyes, squeezed her shoulder and said thank you. Mira nodded. She did not feel brave. She felt like she was walking into a test she had not studied for, and the entire world was watching. Now she stood in the center of the arena under lights that did not come from any star she recognized, and the crowd noise rose and fell like ocean waves. Most of the spectators were not human. She could see chitinous forms, bioluminescent patches, appendages that defied anatomy. Some cheered. Some hissed. The air smelled like metal and something faintly floral. The floor beneath her bare feet was smooth, warm, and faintly magnetic. She curled her toes and felt the hum of the ship's core through the soles of her feet. A horn sounded, deep and resonant, and the crowd fell silent. Across the arena, a gate irised open, and Voreth emerged. He was 9 feet tall, scaled in overlapping plates of dark blue and violet, with 4 arms and a crest of bone that swept back from his skull like a crown. His eyes were gold and slit-pupilled, and when he moved, the air around him shimmered faintly. He wore no armor, only a sash of woven metal that marked his rank. In 2 of his hands he carried nothing. The other 2 were clenched into fists the size of car engines. He stopped 20 feet from Mira and looked down at her. His voice, when he spoke, was a rumble that the translator chip rendered into calm, measured English. "This is Earth's champion." It was not a question, but Mira nodded anyway. Her hands were shaking, so she shoved them into the pockets of her hoodie. She tried to smile, managed something wobbly, and said, "Hi." Voreth tilted his head. Around the arena, murmurs rippled through the crowd. Somewhere in the stands, a delegation of human diplomats sat frozen, faces white. Voreth took 1 step closer, and Mira felt the floor vibrate beneath her. He studied her the way someone might study an insect pinned to a board. "You are a juvenile," he said. "Unarmed, unaugmented. This is an insult." Mira's heart was hammering so hard she could hear it in her ears. She made herself meet his eyes. "I didn't mean to insult you," she said. "I'm just here to try." Voreth's crest flared slightly. "To try," he repeated. He glanced up at his throne, where advisors in flowing robes stood watching. One of them made a gesture Mira could not interpret. Voreth looked back at her. "Do you understand what happens if you fail?" "Yeah," Mira said quietly. "Everyone I know becomes a refugee, maybe worse. And you believe you can prevent this." "I don't know," Mira said, "but I'm going to try anyway." For a moment, Voreth said nothing. Then he exhaled, a sound like steam escaping a valve, and lowered himself into a combat stance. His 4 arms spread wide, claws extending, and the shimmer around him intensified. "Then begin," he said. Mira did not move. She stood there, barefoot and small, and closed her eyes. The woman in the lab coat had told her to imagine the field as a shape, something she could hold in her mind. Mira pictured a sphere. She imagined it expanding outward from her chest, slow and steady, pushing against the air the way breath pushes against water. She did not know if it was working. She did not feel any different, but when she opened her eyes, Voreth was staring at her with an expression she could not name. "Impossible," he whispered. Mira blinked. "What?" Voreth took a step back, then another. His crest flattened and his claws retracted. Around the arena, the crowd noise swelled again, confused, agitated. One of Voreth's advisors shouted something in a language the chip did not translate. Voreth raised 1 hand, silencing them, and dropped to 1 knee. His head bowed. His voice, when he spoke, was barely audible over the crowd. "Forgive me," he said. Mira stared. Her heart was still pounding, her hands were still shaking. She pulled them out of her pockets and held them in front of her, palms up, as if she could see the field herself. She saw nothing, just her own skin, a little pale, a little sweaty. She looked at Voreth, still kneeling, and said, "I didn't do anything." "You did," Voreth said. He lifted his head and his golden eyes were wide. "You carry the breath." "The what?" "The oldest force," Voreth said. "The first law, we have legends of it. Stories passed down for 10,000 generations. It has not manifested in a living being since the founders walked the stars." He rose slowly, and Mira took an involuntary step back. He did not advance. Instead, he pressed 1 massive hand to his chest and inclined his head. "I came here to test Earth's strength. I did not expect to meet a keeper." Mira's mouth was dry. "I'm not a keeper, I'm just a kid." "You are both," Voreth said. His tone had shifted, no longer commanding but reverent, almost gentle. "And I have no right to challenge you." Around them, the arena had descended into chaos. Spectators were shouting, standing, some leaving their seats. The human delegation was on its feet, visibly stunned. One of the diplomats, a tall woman with silver hair, had her hand over her mouth. Voreth turned to face the crowd and raised all four arms. His voice, amplified somehow, boomed across the Colosseum. "The challenge is void. Earth's champion has proven herself beyond contest. Humanity will be granted full membership in the Galactic Assembly, with all rights and protections therein. This is my decree." The crowd erupted. Some sections cheered, others hissed or roared. Mira stood frozen, trying to process what had just happened. She had stepped into the arena 3 seconds ago. She had not thrown a punch. She had not even moved. And now Voreth, the alien king who had threatened to annex her entire planet, was kneeling again, this time pressing his forehead to the arena floor. Mira walked over to him slowly. Her legs felt like jelly. "You can get up," she said. "Please." Voreth rose. He towered over her, but he kept his head bowed. "I will honor this moment for the rest of my life," he said, "and I will ensure the Dominion does the same." Mira nodded, not trusting her voice. Her hands had stopped shaking, but now her knees were threatening to give out. She looked up at the human delegation, found the silver-haired diplomat, and saw the woman mouth the words "thank you." Mira managed a small smile and mouthed back, "You're welcome." Voreth gestured toward the exit gate. "You should rest," he said. "We will convene the assembly tomorrow to formalize the terms. You have earned that time." "Okay," Mira said. She glanced back at the arena floor, at the spot where she had stood moments before, and wondered if her cat was okay. Then she followed Voreth toward the gate, still barefoot, still wearing her hoodie, and tried very hard not to trip. The next morning, Mira woke in a guest suite aboard the Dominion flagship that was larger than her entire house. The bed was soft, the walls were paneled in some kind of bioluminescent wood, and there was a window that looked out onto open space. Earth hung in the distance, blue and fragile. Mira sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, staring at it, trying to remember how to breathe normally. Someone knocked on the door, and she called out that it was open. The silver-haired diplomat stepped inside, carrying a tray with tea and something that looked like toast but smelled like cinnamon. "Good morning," the woman said. Her voice was warm, a little hoarse, as if she had been awake all night. "I'm Ambassador Lena Kovac. I wanted to check on you before the assembly convenes." Mira accepted the tea and wrapped her hands around the cup. "I'm okay," she said. I don't really know what happened." Lena sat down in a chair across from the bed and smiled faintly. "You won." "That's what happened. I didn't fight him." "No," Lena agreed. "But you didn't need to. Voreth recognized something in you that we barely understand ourselves. The Kess have entire philosophical traditions built around probability fields and quantum resonance. To them, encountering someone who naturally generates a stable field is like meeting a saint or a god." Mira stared into her tea. "I'm not either of those things." "Maybe not," Lena said. "But you gave us a future. That's more than anyone else could have done." Mira was quiet for a moment, then asked, "What happens now?" "Now we negotiate," Lena said. "Trade agreements, territorial boundaries, cultural exchanges. The Kess want to learn from us, and we want to learn from them. It will take years, maybe decades, but it starts today. And you will be part of it if you choose." "What if I don't choose?" Lena's expression softened. "Then you go home, you finish school, you pick up milk, you live your life. No one will force you into this." Mira thought about her mom, her cat, the library shifts, the quiet routines that had filled her days before two people in a black car changed everything. She thought about the weight of 70,000 eyes watching her, the feel of the arena floor under her bare feet, the look on Voreth's face when he knelt. She took a sip of tea and said, "Can I think about it?" "Of course," Lena said. "Take all the time you need." The assembly convened in a chamber so vast Mira could not see the far wall. Representatives from dozens of species sat in tiered rows, some in seats, some in tanks, some hovering in suspension fields. Voreth stood at the center of the floor, flanked by his advisors, and when Mira entered, guided by Lena and a security detail, the entire chamber fell silent. Every eye, every optical cluster, every sensory appendage turned toward her. Mira walked to the platform where Voreth waited. She had changed into clean clothes, simple pants and a shirt someone had left in her suite, but she was still barefoot. It felt right somehow. Voreth inclined his head when she approached, and Mira nodded back. Lena stood just behind her, ready to translate nuances the chip might miss, but Voreth spoke clearly, his words meant for the entire assembly. "Yesterday," Voreth said, "I challenged humanity to prove its worth. I expected violence. I expected desperation. Instead, I was met with grace." He gestured toward Mira. "This young human carries a force we have not seen in millennia. She did not wield it as a weapon. She simply allowed it to exist, and in doing so, she reminded me of a truth we have forgotten. Strength is not only the ability to destroy, it is also the ability to endure, to hope, to choose kindness when cruelty would be easier." Around the chamber, murmurs rippled. Some voices were approving, others skeptical. Voreth raised a hand and silence returned. "I propose that Earth be granted full membership in the Galactic Assembly, effective immediately. I further propose that Mira Chen be recognized as humanity's first keeper, with all honors and protections that title entails." One of the representatives, a being with translucent skin and too many joints, rose from its seat. "What guarantees do we have that this human can control the breath? What if it becomes unstable?" Voreth looked at Mira. "Can you answer that?" Mira swallowed. Her mouth was dry again, but she made herself speak. "I don't know if I can control it," she said. "I didn't even know it existed until yesterday, but I'm willing to learn, and I'm willing to work with anyone who wants to help me understand it." The translucent being considered this, then slowly sat back down. Another representative, this one covered in feathers and small crystalline eyes, spoke up. "The Kess have honored the breath for centuries. If King Voreth believes this human is genuine, that is evidence enough for me." Others murmured agreement. A few dissented, their objections ranging from procedural to existential, but Lena stepped forward and addressed them calmly, citing precedents, offering compromises, negotiating in real time. Mira watched, feeling small and out of place, but also strangely calm. This was bigger than her. It always had been. All she could do was show up and try. After 2 hours of debate, the assembly voted. The results were projected onto a massive display above the chamber floor. Earth was granted membership by a margin of 73%. Mira was recognized as a keeper by a narrower margin, 61%, with conditions that she undergo training and submit to periodic evaluations. When the final count appeared, the chamber erupted into a mix of applause, harmonic tones, and bioluminescent flashes. Lena squeezed Mira's shoulder and Voreth inclined his head deeply. "You have changed the course of history," he said quietly, just for her. Mira looked up at him and managed a shaky smile. "I just didn't want anyone to get hurt." "That," Voreth said, "is why you succeeded." The next 3 days were a blur. Mira attended briefings, met representatives from species whose names she could barely pronounce, and sat through ceremonies that involved lights, sounds, and gestures she did not understand but tried her best to reciprocate. She was polite, patient, and deeply, persistently exhausted. At night, she retreated to her suite and video-called her mom, who cried and laughed and asked 100 questions Mira could not fully answer. Her mom did not know the details, only that Mira had done something important and would be home soon. Mira said yes soon and meant it. On the 4th day, Lena found her sitting by the window staring at Earth. "Ready to go home?" Lena asked. Mira nodded. "Yeah, but I want to come back." Lena smiled. We were hoping you would say that. They flew back to Earth on a small shuttle, just Myra, Lena, and two pilots who did not speak much. The descent was smooth, the sky clear, and when they landed at a private airfield in Nevada, Myra's mom was waiting on the tarmac. Myra saw her through the shuttle window and felt something loosen in her chest. The hatch opened, and Myra ran down the ramp and into her mother's arms. Her mom held her tight, smelling like lavender and coffee, and whispered, "I knew you'd be okay." Myra did not correct her. She just held on. That night, back in her own bed, Myra lay awake and listened to her cat purring on the pillow beside her head. She thought about Voreth kneeling, about the assembly chamber, about the fact that 70,000 beings had watched her stand barefoot in an arena and declare herself willing to try. She thought about the breath, whatever it was, humming quietly inside her like a second heartbeat. She did not understand it yet. Maybe she never fully would, but it was hers, and she would learn to carry it the way she carried everything else, one step at a time. Over the following weeks, Myra returned to school. Her classmates knew something had happened, rumors spreading through social media and news outlets that Earth had narrowly avoided annihilation, and a teenage girl had somehow been involved. Myra did not confirm or deny anything. She attended her classes, worked her library shifts, and tried to pretend her life was normal. It almost worked. Then, on a Friday afternoon, a package arrived at her house. It was small, wrapped in metallic fabric that shimmered when she touched it, and it had no return address. Inside was a small crystalline device and a handwritten note in English. The note said, "For when you are ready to begin." Myra held the device up to the light and saw patterns shifting inside it, equations and symbols she did not recognize. She set it on her desk next to her homework and stared at it for a long time. The next morning she called Lena. "I'm ready," she said. Lena did not ask what she meant. "I will arrange transport," she said. "Welcome back, Keeper." Myra returned to the Dominion flagship 2 weeks later. This time, she knew what to expect. The guest suite was the same, the view of Earth just as breathtaking, but now there were others waiting for her. Voreth introduced her to a scholar named Thessa, a slight, amphibious being with skin like wet stone and eyes that glowed faintly green. Thessa specialized in quantum resonance and had spent 3 centuries studying the breath. She spoke softly with a rhythm that reminded Myra of rain and explained that training would be slow, careful, and often frustrating. "You will learn to see the field," Thessa said, "to shape it, to move within it without collapsing it. This is not combat training. This is learning to breathe a different way." Myra nodded. "How long will it take?" "Years," Thessa said. "Perhaps decades, but you have time." They began the next day. Thessa took Myra to a quiet chamber deep in the ship, a room with walls that absorbed sound and light, leaving only soft gray emptiness. Myra sat on the floor, cross-legged, and Thessa sat across from her. "Close your eyes," Thessa said. "Feel your heartbeat. Count it. Let it become the only thing you hear." Myra did. At first she heard everything else too, the hum of the ship, the whisper of air through vents, the faint creak of her own joints. But slowly, gradually, her heartbeat rose above the noise, steady, persistent. Thessa's voice came again, softer now. "Now feel the space between beats. That is where the field lives." Myra tried. She felt nothing at first, just the ordinary rhythm of her pulse. Then faintly she sensed something else, a hum that was not sound, a pressure that was not weight. It flickered at the edge of her awareness, and when she reached for it, it slipped away. "Do not reach," Thessa said. "Let it come to you." Myra stopped trying. She just sat, breathing, counting heartbeats, and after a while the hum returned. This time she did not chase it. She let it settle around her like a blanket, warm and faintly electric. When she opened her eyes, Thessa was smiling. "You felt it," Thessa said. "Yeah," Myra whispered. "I did." They trained every day for 3 months. Myra learned to hold the field without collapsing it, to expand it slowly, to pull it back. She learned that the field responded to emotion, to intent, to the quiet choices she made moment by moment. Fear made it flicker. Anger made it spike. Calm made it steady. Thessa taught her meditative techniques, breathing patterns, visualizations. Some days, Myra felt like she was getting it. Other days, she felt like she was drowning. On one of the hard days, Myra sat in the training chamber with her head in her hands, frustrated to the point of tears. Thessa sat beside her and waited. Finally, Myra said, "What if I can't do this? What if I mess up and people get hurt?" Thessa was quiet for a moment, then said, "The breath is not a weapon. It is a mirror. It reflects what you carry inside. If you carry fear, it will reflect fear. If you carry hope, it will reflect hope. You cannot control the universe, Myra. You can only choose what you bring to it." Myra looked up. "That sounds like a cop-out." Thessa laughed, "A sound like water over stones." "Perhaps. But it is also true." Myra wiped her eyes and nodded. "Okay, let's try again." They did, and this time the field held. 6 months into her training, Voreth invited Myra to attend a diplomatic summit on a neutral station orbiting a distant star. Representatives from the Kess Dominion, the Terran Coalition, and a dozen other factions would be negotiating resource-sharing agreements in contested sectors. Myra's presence was not required, but Voreth believed it would be beneficial. "You represent something new," he said. "A bridge between what we were and what we might become." Myra agreed to go. Lena accompanied her, along with a small human delegation and a security detail. The station was immense, a rotating wheel studded with docking bays and observation decks. The summit took place in a conference hall with transparent walls that looked out onto the void. Myra sat in the back trying to be inconspicuous, while diplomats argued over mining rights, trade routes, and colonial boundaries. On the second day, tensions flared. A representative from the Virin Collective, a hive mind species with chitinous exoskeletons and mandibles that clicked when they spoke, accused the Kess of violating a treaty. Voreth responded calmly, citing legal precedents, but the Virin representative was not satisfied. Voices rose. Security personnel shifted uncomfortably. Lena leaned over to Myra and whispered, "This could get ugly." Myra watched the argument escalate, feeling the field hum inside her chest. She did not know if she should do anything. She was not a diplomat. She was just a 17-year-old girl who had learned to breathe differently. But the hum grew stronger and she felt a pull, faint but insistent, toward the center of the room. She stood. Lena grabbed her wrist. "Myra, wait." Myra gently pulled free and walked to the center of the conference floor. Every head turned. The Virin representative stopped mid-sentence. Voreth's crest flared slightly, but he did not speak. Myra stood there, barefoot again because she had taken off her shoes under the table, and looked at the Virin representative. "I'm sorry," she said. "I know I'm not supposed to interrupt, but can I ask a question?" The Virin representative's mandibles clicked, its compound eyes fixed on her. "Speak," it said. "What do you want?" Myra asked. "Like really want, not the legal stuff, just the thing that matters most to you right now." The Virin representative hesitated. Around the room, delegates shifted uneasily. Finally, the Virin said, "We want assurance that our colony worlds will not be encroached upon. We want to raise our young without fear of displacement." Myra nodded. She looked at Voreth. "What do you want?" Voreth met her gaze. "We want stability. Trade routes that do not collapse into conflict every decade. A future where our children do not inherit our wars." Myra looked around the room. "Does anyone here want something different?" Silence. Then, slowly, heads shook, mandibles stilled. One by one, representatives acknowledged the commonality. Myra felt the field hum louder, not as a weapon but as a resonance, a shared frequency. She did not know if she was doing it or if it was simply responding to the truth in the room. Either way, the tension eased. "Then maybe," Myra said quietly, "we start there with what we all want and figure out the details after." The Virin representative studied her for a long moment. Then it inclined its head, a gesture of respect. "You are wise for one so young." Mira smiled faintly. "I'm just trying not to mess this up." The summit continued for 3 more days, but the tone had shifted. Delegates still argued, still negotiated hard, but the anger had drained out of it. Agreements were reached, not perfect but workable. On the final day, Voreth found Mira standing by one of the observation decks, watching stars drift past. He stood beside her in silence for a while, then said, "You did well." "I just asked a question," Mira said. "Questions can be powerful," Voreth replied, "especially the simple ones." Mira looked up at him. "Do you ever regret challenging Earth?" Voreth considered this. "No," he said, "because it led me to you, and through you to a better version of my people." Mira did not know what to say to that, so she just nodded. They stood together, watching the stars, and Mira thought about how strange it was that a girl who had spent most of her life worrying about overdue library books and feeding her cat was now standing on a space station, talking to an alien king about the future of civilizations. Life was weird, but it was also kind of beautiful. When Mira returned to Earth, she finished her senior year of high school. She walked at graduation, accepted her diploma, and gave a speech that the principal had asked her to keep vague. She talked about second chances, about showing up even when you are scared, about the importance of asking questions. Her classmates applauded politely. Most of them had no idea what she had really done. Mira preferred it that way. After graduation, she enrolled in university, majoring in diplomacy and quantum theory. She split her time between Earth and the Dominion flagship, training with Thessa, attending summits, learning languages and customs from species she had never imagined existed. It was exhausting and exhilarating and occasionally terrifying. Some nights she lay awake wondering if she was doing enough. Other nights she slept deeply, dreamlessly, the field humming softly around her like a lullaby. 2 years into her training, Thessa told her she was ready for an advanced exercise. They returned to the quiet chamber, but this time Thessa was not alone. Voreth was there, along with 3 other Kess warriors, all of whom had trained for decades in field manipulation. Mira looked at Thessa, confused. "This is a resonance circle," Thessa explained. "You will attempt to synchronize your field with theirs. It is difficult and requires absolute trust." Mira swallowed. "What happens if I mess up?" "The fields collapse," Thessa said. "No one is harmed, but the exercise fails. You must be willing to let go of control and trust the others to hold the shape with you." Mira nodded. She sat in the center of the circle, and the Kess warriors sat around her, evenly spaced. Voreth was directly across from her, his golden eyes calm. Thessa gave the signal, and everyone closed their eyes. Mira felt the field hum to life, not just her own but theirs too, separate frequencies weaving through the air. She tried to match them, to find the common rhythm. At first it was chaotic, dissonant, like tuning a radio through static. Then slowly, the rhythms began to align. Mira felt the moment they locked together, a sudden clarity that was almost overwhelming. The field expanded, not outward but inward, a shared space where intention and emotion flowed freely. She felt Voreth's steady determination, Thessa's quiet joy, the warrior's disciplined focus. She felt her own hope, tangled with fear and wonder, and she let it join the weave without trying to hide it. The circle held for 30 seconds, then a minute, then 5. When Thessa finally called for them to release, Mira opened her eyes and found herself crying. "You did it," Thessa said, smiling. Mira wiped her eyes and laughed shakily. "That was incredible." Voreth rose and offered her a hand. She took it, and he pulled her to her feet. "You are no longer a student," he said. "You are a keeper in full." Mira did not feel ready for that title, but she nodded anyway. "Thank you," she said, "for believing in me." "You made it easy," Voreth replied. Over the next few years, Mira traveled across the galaxy. She mediated disputes, taught resonance techniques to young Kess initiates, and represented humanity at councils and assemblies. She made friends from a dozen species, learned to eat foods that did not resemble anything from Earth, and occasionally got homesick for rainy afternoons and her mother's terrible cooking. She video called home as often as she could, and her mom always asked the same question: "Are you happy?" Myra thought about it every time. The answer was complicated. She missed home. She missed normalcy. But she also loved what she was doing, loved the people she met, loved the quiet moments when the field hummed and she felt connected to something vast and ancient and kind. So she always said yes. She was happy. And her mom always smiled and said, "Good, that's all that matters." On the 5th anniversary of the day she stepped into the arena, Voreth organized a commemoration ceremony aboard the flagship. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to honor the moment that had changed the trajectory of galactic politics. Myra was asked to speak. She stood on the same arena floor where it had all begun, barefoot once again, and looked out at the crowd. "5 years ago," she said, "I stood here and had no idea what I was doing. I still don't most days, but I have learned that showing up matters. Asking questions matters. Trusting people, even when it is scary, matters. The field I carry is not mine alone. It belongs to all of us. It is the space between what we are and what we could be, and it only works if we choose every day to fill it with hope instead of fear." The crowd was silent. Then, slowly, applause began. It spread through the arena, joined by harmonic tones, rhythmic clicks, bioluminescent pulses. Myra smiled, feeling the field hum inside her chest, steady and warm. She thought about the girl she had been 5 years ago, walking home from the library, worried about overdue books and feeding her cat. That girl was still here, she always would be. But now she carried something else too, a promise, a possibility, a breath. After the ceremony, Myra found a quiet corner of the observation deck and sat down, legs dangling over the edge of a low platform. Earth was visible in the distance, a blue marble against the black. Voreth found her there and sat beside her, silent for a long while. Finally, he said, "Do you ever regret it, saying yes that day?" Myra thought about it. "No," she said. "I mean, it is hard sometimes, and I miss a lot of things, but I wouldn't trade it." Voreth nodded. "Good, because you have given us all something precious. A reminder that strength and gentleness are not opposites, they are partners." Myra smiled. "You are getting philosophical in your old age." Voreth laughed, a deep rumbling sound. "Perhaps, or perhaps you have taught me to see differently." They sat together, watching Earth turn slowly in the void, and Myra thought about the future. There would be more summits, more conflicts, more moments when she would have to stand up and ask the simple questions. There would be days when the field felt too heavy and days when it felt like a gift. But she would keep showing up. She would keep trying. Because that was what keepers did. And somewhere, on a small blue planet spinning through space, her cat was probably knocking things off the counter, and her mom was probably worrying, and the library probably still had her favorite corner by the window. Myra would go back soon. She always did. But for now she sat on a spaceship with an alien king, barefoot and smiling, and felt the hum of the universe breathe alongside her. Years passed. Myra grew older, wiser, and more confident in her role. She trained new keepers, human and otherwise, who showed signs of resonance. She helped establish protocols for peaceful field use, wrote papers on quantum diplomacy, and occasionally still forgot to pick up milk. Her mother visited the flagship once, wide-eyed and delighted, and Voreth gave her a formal tour that ended with tea in the observation lounge. Her mom told Myra later that Voreth was very polite and that she approved. On Myra's 25th birthday, Thessa presented her with a gift. It was a small pendant, carved from the same crystalline material as the training device Voreth had sent years ago. Inside the pendant, patterns shifted and glowed faintly. Thessa explained that it was a resonance anchor, attuned specifically to Myra's field. "Wear it," Thessa said, "and you will always be able to find your center, no matter where you are." Myra put it on and felt the field hum in response, a gentle pulse that matched her heartbeat. "Thank you," she said, hugging Thessa tightly, "for everything." "You have become more than I ever hoped," Thessa said, "and I am honored to have been part of your journey." That night, Myra stood alone in the training chamber, the pendant warm against her skin. She closed her eyes and felt the field expand around her, steady and bright. She thought about the girl who had walked into an arena barefoot and terrified, who had stood in front of an alien king and said, "I am just here to try." That girl had not known what she was doing, she had just shown up, and somehow that had been enough. Myra opened her eyes and smiled. The field hummed, the pendant glowed, and somewhere in the vastness of space, a future was unfolding. A future built on questions, on second chances, on the quiet belief that kindness could be as powerful as any weapon. Myra had helped start it, but it belonged to everyone now. And that, she thought, was exactly how it should be. She walked out of the chamber, turned off the lights, and headed back to her quarters. Tomorrow there would be another summit, another challenge, another chance to try. But tonight she would call her mom, feed her cat via the automated feeder she had installed, and maybe watch a movie. Because even keepers needed to remember where they came from. And Mira Chen, for all her training and titles, was still a girl from Earth who believed in showing up, asking questions, and trying her best. And that, in the end, was the greatest strength of all.